Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of empowerED Podcast. And today we continue with our reflection on what we have learned. We are 1 year into the pandemic, and I'm very excited because if you've noticed, almost all of the episodes, in all of the episodes, we are welcoming back our honorable guests from the previous seasons. And right now, I do remember our special guest is Mr. Frederick Perez. I do remember that he was the last guest that I interviewed face to face before we went into I think into the pandemic. I think we were discussing about literacy and all those problems before, especially with the PISA results. Now he's back. So welcome back, Mr. Frederick Perez.
Thank you very much, Jim, and welcome back to our listeners and our viewers.
All right. For those who do not know yet, Mr. Frederick Perez is the assistant principal for academics at Xavier School, New Valley. And he is also the president of the Reading Association of the Philippines. So we are very much honored for his presence as he enlightens us on our one big topic. It's a big topic, and I'm not quite sure if I'm pretty sure one episode is not enough to really discuss most of it, but we are happy that he's here to enlighten us a little bit further. Let's go and dig deep into the idea or into the reality or the state of literacy in the Philippines at this time of the pandemic. Mr. Perez, after 1 year or almost or more than a year into the pandemic, what key insights can you share to us about the state of literacy in the Philippines right now?
First, I would like to talk about policy. So, the government has actually experienced dealing with students and teachers in online and modular approach, and we don't have the face-to-face setup. My first insight is to be able, I hope that our leaders will be able to call for a research, maybe convoked by an educational commission, which will assess the learning losses, the learning gaps our students experience in both literacy and numeracy, so that we may be able to address this problem more significantly and more to the point. That's my first insight. My second insight is actually we should be able to, at this point, to train our teachers better, because our system of education, our higher education institutions might be training our teachers now still on face-to-face and traditional approach. I think that there should be a shift in the training of our teachers at this point, that since they are learning online also, there should be a shift on training on different methods which will address problems and also strategies in online and modular approach in teaching. They should be exposed to these methods, and then also there should be, I think, because the parents, the community, they're now involved in the education of our children. So I believe that it is important that the community may also be trained or give information or at least informed. Because what happened to us now is that the modules just came into the parents' laps and they were surprised what to do with the modules. So there should be an active and engaged training or even information campaign to parents and local government units and community helpers to be able to teach our students, especially those who are doing the modular approach. And here, It's true. I have mentioned this in other interviews I had that the home is becoming the seedbed of education once again. But I believe that in the local government units, in the barangays, there should be learning hubs. Uh, I mean here that we should involve uh, older kids, like those who are out of school, those who are stay-at-home moms, those community leaders who are capable of actually alleviating the current situation, which is really, for me, very frustrating, I should say. So far, that's what I want to have an educational commission and a call for research. Number two is still training of teachers. And number three is involvement of the community. No? Greater involvement of the community through learning hubs, community learning tutors, and community learning guardians.
Sir Perez, I love your point, especially the last one, the community involvement. Um, for the longest time, because of course our default before was really face to face, the responsibility really of teaching and making sure that every student gets to read, do math problems or every literacy that they have. It's always been like, it's the job of the school, it's the job of the teacher, right? You would always hear in Tagalog or Filipino, it would say, kaya nga, that's why we're sending you to school because teachers are there to teach you. And right now, if there's one thing that we could really pick up from the state of literacy and how it's connected with the community or even with the family itself, the basic unit of the community, it's that, it's a shared responsibility. More often before, we would always hear parents, our stakeholders, their partners. But most of the time, I think because how schools have really run learning or the learning and teaching process itself. It's always, just go to school, teachers will take care of you, and then when you go home, no homework or whatever. It's not that we want that there will be more and more homework, but right now parents have realized again their role, that they are integral to the learning process also. The family. I've always treasured that memory of my father, my mother, who would just sit before near me or beside me and say, "What happened in school? Is there a difficult lesson?" Things like that. So, well, there's one thing that we could pick up from the pandemic. It's the realization again how the role of the community, of the family, like what you said, even older brothers and sisters, siblings, right? So very helpful insight. Mr. Perez, reading and writing. I do remember you came to Savior School San Juan, and then I asked you let's do a podcast, and we were talking about the PISA result. And I'm pretty sure I was one of those people who have interviewed you about what you think about the reading and writing, or even the result of PISA itself. And then come the pandemic, we again talked about this, right? I think this is your third episode with us right now. What has changed? What has transformed in terms of these skills?
I interview people. I have not, or we have not conducted a formal research as of the moment, but in my interviews with teachers, especially in the public schools, what has really been bothering many of them is that the students are actually not doing their modules properly. So the teachers, in fact, I have many teacher friends from the public school who are actually saying, how do we assess now? How do we grade? Is it fair for us to give a numerical grade to to our students when in fact we do not know if they are really the ones who did the modules. So the what has really changed for me at this point, especially in the modular approach, is the the loss maybe or the lack of academic integrity because our teachers are not convinced that the students are the ones who answer the modules. But I think it's also rooted in the fact that our modules are written just like textbooks. They're not really modules which are self-directed. The modules look like textbooks, and it's not enough for a student to just read the modules. I think that some of the modules need still adult instruction. So that is something. And then also in terms of academic integrity, and then assessment, what else? Those are the two main points, I think. No? So academic integrity and assessment, that is the worry of many of our teachers. However, in the online distance learning, for example, it's also a worry, but less because there are parameters being used by online teachers which help them assure the integrity of their assessments. And in reading, reading and writing, what is difficult is that our students are no longer in touch with the text. In the modular approach, the students are left to the modules. They're left with the text with no adult guide. In the online distance or online learning, they have the text, but it's in another form, in a digital form. So I think there's a gap in between. There's a big gap in between because in the modular approach, the students are left to themselves. In the online setup, the students are used to texts, actual texts, but now it's on digital form. So it might also cause digital fatigue, and also the smell of the book, the smell of the pages, the tactile part of reading. So, well, for many of our students are digital natives, so it might not be a problem. But for those who are not attuned to digital texts, then it becomes a problem.
Mr. Perez, I love your idea about how learning materials or the learning resources that are being designed actually play a crucial role. I do remember this because in distance education, I think it's the mindset. We have to make sure that teachers understand that distance education itself requires, it has its own pedagogical approaches, even principles on designing learning resources and materials. I do remember spending one semester or one term understanding learning materials, and in distance education, it is said that the learning materials, the modules, the learning packets, all those things are extension of the teacher. So
Yes.
it extends the teaching presence of the non-present teacher. So
So
I
it
think
means,
it's very interesting because if you like what you've said, I've seen modules, printed modules, and it's very impersonal. It's as
correct.
if here are the knowledge, expose, the exposition of knowledge. Here are your formative assessments, let's check. And then behind it is the inverted answer key. It's impersonal because when I was training teachers, I've always told them that make sure that your students can hear you as if you're talking directly to them. And it's interesting because in the end, you will always see very impersonal ones. I mean, textbooks are good; they're learning materials, but right now, we need to make sure that one, it's not just speaking to the students. Second, it's developmentally appropriate. Uh,
Correct.
yeah,
So it goes to the point of direct and explicit instruction, and at the same time, it should be dialogical. So there should be a connection established through the modules and through the modules being uploaded in our online distance learning. I experience now doing online distance learning in the school where I work, and we advise our students, our teachers, to make modules which are speaking to the students as if the teacher is there. So you know that, Jim. So it should be there should be a relationship created at the same time. It's not just about the subject. There should be a relationship because there should still be the social aspect of learning, which is being lost as we are doing this modular and online distance learning.
I was trying to the term is I trying to remember. It's called guided didactic conversation.
Correct.
I think that's the principle in distance education. Very basic, I think. Very basic. It simply means that your learning material should extend the non present physical presence or something like that of the teacher. Very interesting because I think like what you've said in terms of teacher training, that's one area that maybe we could look into. Mr. Perez, moving on to the next part. Challenges. What challenges do you still see at this time around? I mean, we're more than a year. We've definitely learned from our experiences. I know that a lot of schools, from the first time they brought out their primers for their distance education program or learning continuity program, after 1 month, there were a lot of changes already, modifications. It's very good because those changes actually considers student and parent and even teachers' input. So we've definitely learned from our previous experiences. But based on your expertise and perspective as president of a big organization in the Philippines, what continues to challenge us right now?
First of all, it's still the training of teachers. No, it's still lacking, but I want to look at it in a more positive way that we have to engage our teachers and listen to them because so it means the first point I want to the problem of teacher training will persist, but what I want educational leaders like me and like all the others would do us to develop literacy is to help the teacher in an engaged literacy. That's the first time. That's the first time I'm pronouncing that engaged literacy, which means that it is not only print literacy. It will include other media like digital texts, audiobooks. No, so that's the problem will remain. But I want us to have an engaged literacy, which means that also that the materials should not only come from our academic materials. We should look at our environment so that an engaged literacy is a literacy which is found where you are. So this is something which we have to promote. So if they have comics, if they have graphic novels, if I mentioned this in another interview, if they have balutan ng tinapa, no, old newspapers, we can use this in the instruction of children and develop literacy. One thing which is lost in both modular and online learning is writing. No? So there's a widening gap of writing losses because the fine motor skills are not exercised. But how do we do that? We should also involve our students in other activities other than writing, like drawing, doing arts. So that's how we can actually help our students. And then also, we have to really rely on other people. No, so I mentioned that already, the involvement of the community, and we have to awaken in our parents and strengthen in them family literacy. We always say that all teachers are reading teachers, but family literacy may be developed with parents who are reading to their students, telling them stories, and to other forms. So multiple literacies will be essential also, because I think we are continuing, we will continue to experience education in the pandemic in maybe one or more year. So that's something I want to say.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Perez. I love what you mentioned about every teacher is a reading teacher. I've always wanted that. It always captures my attention, and it always pushes me also to advocate. I, for one, have experienced that when I was a student. I can't solve word problems because basically I don't understand what the word problems were asking me, and that was math. Of course, it's a very specific kind of comprehension, reading comprehension. It's in a specific discipline. But I do remember before that the only intervention or the only way for me to really understand that was, my math teacher really sitting down with us and telling us this is how you need to understand. So I was very thankful for that. I was already in high school. As the word problems became more complicated, it was harder to understand the what I need to solve. I mean, like, number one, you don't really understand what's it's asking, and then you get lost with the numbers and the formula that is being asked of you. But very interesting. And I think, Mr. Perez, the good point that you've also mentioned is how school leadership, how administrators would really ensure that the professional training programs of teachers, especially with literacy, is not just a sporadic thing. Like, we do it during summer in service training, but during the school year, no more follow through, no more follow up. It's as if there's a scheduled PD, and the scheduled PD is happening during summer. I hope we get to change that kind of mindset. Mr. Perez, we're on the last part of our conversation. Any last thoughts about our topic on literacy?
I would like first, before I conclude, to highlight what you said about your problems in math and literacy. I believe that literacy is the mother of all knowledge, or the mother of all learning, because to be able to learn, we have to appreciate the letters, the sounds, and everything that it's in that we have on the page or the screen. What I want and what I suggest parents and teachers to do this time is to be able to encourage our students to become independent learners. So during the pandemic, our students will have to do a lot of learning in autonomy. Maybe, as you have mentioned and heard, we have to alleviate learning poverty. There's really learning poverty. There's really a vacuum which exists in our midst, and parents and teachers should be able to do scaffolding in order to help our students become independent learners. That is the goal. We are now forced to engage our students into active learning. We we have to provide scaffolds, crutches, support in order for them to learn. And what I want our parents to do is not to give them the answer key at the back, not to give them uh, easy ways, which is actually contributing to their non-learning or unlearning. So that's one. And then we have to develop also um, significant adults as learning guides. We have to develop family literacy. We have to develop trust in the family so that this may result into a more engaged literacy at home. And also for schools, educational leaders, we can actually encourage literacy, reading, writing, speaking, listening, viewing, and presenting in different forms through video formats, through vlogs, and at the same time giving them other ways like helping them or guiding them to learn with their peers. No, it's very common now to say that there could be peer reading. In most schools, I know they provide a summer reading list, and then take all opportunities at home and online to become literacy opportunities. That's something I want to promote at this time. No, so unengaged literacy. It's not. I will say it in Filipino. It's not. Mag-aaral ka lang, magbabasa ka lang for learning. So you will only read for academic purposes. So literacy should be a tool in all our activities to develop life skills, to help them in their psychological needs. For example, if they're sad, you can give them a book which will help them perk their spirits. So things like that. So literacy is the mother of all knowledge, and we have to have an engaged literacy both online and at home. That's
Perfect
it.
answers, Mr. Perez. Coding. Yes, 2 days ago, I spoke in the Senior Congress 2021, and we mentioned that reading is fundamental. It's very fundamental, such that it's the door that opens opportunities for every individual. So thank you for the big idea, the very essential reminder, Mr. Perez, about the role of literacy, reading, writing, and even higher level of literacy skills that we need to focus on and have developed in our students. So we've reached our last part, so there's not much to do but to thank Mr. Perez for being here with us. Mr. Perez is always on the go. He's a very busy person, but he always makes time for joining our empowerED podcast, and we're very much grateful for that, Mr. Perez. So thank you so much, Mr. Perez.
Thank you very much, Jim, and continue to soar and help educators develop their skills in this time of crisis.
Thank you. And thank you to our audience for being with us. We'll see you in our next episode. Goodbye, everyone. Goodbye, Mr. Perez. Stay safe.
Bye.